Welcome to Combat Learning, Science for Incredible Martial Arts Training. I'm your host, Josh Peacock, 5th Dan in Taekwondo and a skill training specialist for martial arts. Before I put you in the episode, remember to sign up for the free Combat Learning newsletter at www.combatlearning.com. You'll get an introduction to motor learning for martial arts PDF, which gets you up to speed on the powerful stuff that we're talking about in the podcast. I'll send you a transfer of learning cheat sheet, which helps you understand if the activities you do in practice are going to show up in competition. Tons of other free coaching resources, and you'll never miss a podcast episode. Head over to combatlearning.com now to sign up free. Finally, if you're excited to jump in, hit the subscribe button on your podcatcher and enjoy the show. Yeah.
But here's a question for you, and this is
Sure.
something that I am trying to understand, and I'm trying to spend a lot of time wrapping my head around.
Mm-hmm.
I think grappling sports and striking sports are different.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that you have a body, you're connected to another body, changes the way we teach. So I think grappling immediately lends itself to alive, lends itself to constraints-led approach, lends itself to everything, being done with resistance, being done uncooperatively, being done alive. The striking sports, to me, I still am not 100% sure there isn't more leeway to do some things that touch on repetition. And when I dig into other sports that look like striking sports to me, like baseball,
Mm-hmm.
It seems like there is some room for that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So in baseball, you have obviously not every hit is the same, not every pitch is the same, but you're in the same area and the task is you can repeat the same task over and over again without much change in the environment. So the only things that are changing is the pitch. And so you calibrate to the pitch. And so the variability there is much lower than if you're boxing, for example, or kickboxing. I actually think that because you can control limbs and apply your strength better in jiu-jitsu, that if you were going to do repetition, you would probably find more value in grappling than in striking, because striking changes too much moment to moment.
Okay, so let me clarify then.
Yeah.
When I say repetition, let me use an example.
Okay.
I have two guys, and the drill is, you will move around. You are unconstrained in your movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not constraining, but person A, you will just throw 1-2. Just an example.
Mm-hmm.
Let's consider these people newer.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to throw a 1-2, and person B, you're going to defend a 1-2. Now, when I'm not prescribing how to throw a 1-2, and I'm not prescribing how to defend a 1-2,
Mm-hmm.
and the person defending the 1-2 does not know when the 1-2 is coming. They have to read that information. There is all that specifying information, but I've reduced the variability and taken out some of the danger. And we can scale it up a little bit by having the person throw into 1-2, add some fakes and feints. We could have them change their timing a little bit, have them change the way they enter and exit. And the defensive person there's all kinds of, they could parry and block and slip and be aggressive. And, but it is very constrained, because the person that is receiving knows that they're receiving a 1-2. What are your thoughts?
It's too scripted. And just receiving a 1-2, especially over and over again, it's not really a problem you're going to deal with a skilled opponent, even maybe even on an amateur level. I don't think people they throw based on what they see. Especially with combinations, they throw based on the affordances that are available to them and based on what it is they're trying to accomplish. And so they don't get to develop the different attacking and defensive strategies that will help them personally, individually succeed in a striking sport if they can't explore those early on. So if you're going to scale, I mean, you should scale it. So when you scale it, you have to find a way to keep it safe without the mechanism of safety being, I know what's coming.
Right. So I do think a lot of times in MMA, we are dealing with someone else initiating. So I don't know if I fully agree that it's not a situation, and we could even scale it back to just a jab,
Yeah.
uh, um,
Well, initiation versus knowing the tactic, you don't, those are, so like a designated initiator, I think that's a useful type of game.
Right. Well, we do a lot
Yeah,
of offense, defense,
right.
constraining that. And I'm talking about I'm talking about a drill that I would use with, beginners, and it, um, not, I don't know. Let's say beginners. Let's use the term
Yeah.
beginners, um, to build up some confidence, to build up their eyes, um, and to feel, um, what it's like to take contact. Um, but of course, limiting because of safety concerns.
Yeah. So you don't have to add any, you don't have to stipulate tactics. I mean, you can limit tactics, but you don't have to say, it has to be a 1-2 or anything like that. You can, if it's general enough that you want them to understand contact, shoulder, boxing to the shoulder and hips, touching the shoulder and hips is a great way to do that. And if you want to add head in there, you can do something that's not super representative, but it's more useful in my opinion than just doing a 1-2. For example, you could have them
Well,
touch the top of the head.
don't get stuck on the 1-2. It's just I was just
Yeah.
pulling that out. It
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of value in just a jab. Moving
But
around now.
a jab doing what though? Like just
What do you
like
mean?
stopping a person or setting up your
Well,
or
so
understanding
I
your
don't
range.
dictate. Right. So I'm not dictating how the jab is
Mhm.
used, because the jab has so many functions.
Yeah.
Right. So just moving around and exploring the jab as a defense, as an offense,
Mhm.
as a distance measure, as
Sure.
to the forearms, to the face, to
Mhm.
the body, to the shoulders, to all those things.
Mhm.
Um, I find tremendous. I find a lot of value in drills like that. Um,
Yeah, I don't think there's any I mean, that's over constraining. If you want to start there, that's okay to me. But I wouldn't
yeah.
want to explore there very long because there's so much missing information. So the
Oh
reason,
no, it wouldn't be. It would be maybe the like a warm up,
sure,
right?
yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And a replacement, quote unquote, replacement for what a normal gym would do. We're hitting the pad with the
Yes.
jab,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then very quickly, you know, the defensive man um, is adding defensive shots and
Hmm.
parrying and calf kicks, and I'm putting the information in. I'm just
Hmm.
talking about sort of warm ups and calibrating to make sure that they know how to jab, and to make
Yeah.
sure they know how to defend the jab before I put them in it, because we both know that if we put people together and one side has a good jab, um, those drills don't look, they, they're not very good for the person that's getting jabbed.
No. Yeah, I mean, there's different ways that are very common ways to use the jab, and you can quickly move from like a jab only sparring to something that's asymmetrical, for example. So one person has the jab, and the other person can use both arms, and the person who can only use the jab is somebody, he has to find out how to not be scored upon by using his jab and his movements. So I mean that's one way where it could be really useful. Like people use the jab as a way to sort of counter the well, no, I'm sorry. So the people use the cross to counter the jab in some instances. So like those are all really important things that kind of run together in the course of a match. So you want people to have the ability to explore and find those functions for themselves. They might never
Right.
do that in fighting. You know, they could get really good and never use a cross to counter a jab, but um, you want them to be able to explore environments where that's available to them. And so if you're scaling it down, you have something asymmetrical, like one person only has the lead hand and the other person has both hands to score. And so one has to just survive. And the other one has to score as much as he can score. And then obviously switch so they both can explore that
We
environment.
do it. We do a ton.
Yeah,
We do a ton of that. So I do
cool.
a ton of what we're talking about now in striking. Um, scaling up and down. And one thing I've done a lot the last few months is I've allowed the students to. So, I have a mixed class. So let's say tonight when I coach, I'll have anywhere from people who it's like, their first couple months in my class and people who are fighting in January. And so one of the things I've had a lot of success with is allowing them to scale the drill on their own and to explore their own creativity within whatever shell that I put them in. So let's say the shell is offense, defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for the beginners, I'll ask them to let's, try and stay a little further apart from each other so your partner can see everything, because I want them to defend everything. I don't want you to fake them out and punch them in the face. But throw your combos and stuff. But I let the more advanced scale it and be creative and apply. And I'll see them, swinging back counters, and I'll see them shooting and whatever it is. But I've had a lot of success allowing them to explore and be creative within whatever I've constrained.
Mm-hmm.
And I've started doing that with a lot of drills where I have them. Sometimes I'll have them before they start just get with each other and say, what are the rules of engagement here? Like, if we get into the clinch here, are we going to try and dump each other? This way no one's surprised. That it's terrible when one person's doing one thing and one person's doing another.
Right.
One person thinks something's going on and another person thinks. And so I'll set the drill up in a way where the beginners have very simple task focuses. Enter onto the cage and just hold them on the cage. But the more advanced guys, set your rules of engagement. Are you working all the way to your takedown? Are you working to take the back? Do that with each other. And I've had a lot of success with that. And it's allowed me to, again, remove myself a little bit, not worry if I am over constraining or not being as representative as I want, because they seem to default to more representative. And it's something I've been pretty happy with.
I love that idea. I haven't seen a lot of people try that yet, and uh, they get good. They don't just get good at skill of kickboxing or jujitsu or whatever. They get they start to become skilled at the training methodology. So if they ever wanted to become a coach or just, help somebody out at the gym, there's not a huge coach training arc that you have
Right.
to go through.
So I'll give you another piece that I do that I think is all part of building that same thing is my pro practices, or quote unquote pro practice. I have amateurs, but my fight team practice, let's say, after the sparring is done, after the work is done, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll bring them together and I'll say, okay, you now have 3 5-minute periods. I want you to choose someone you sparred with or whoever it is. And I want you to choose an area that you either uncomfortable or you didn't get enough work in, or a situation that you need more time in. And I want you to go over and I want you to create a drill, and I want you to get time. And you figure it out. You can do half a round. They could do half a round. You could do a round. They could do, or whatever it is. I want to see you doing some alive work. Keep the intensity low. We're not going to be competitive again. We've already been competitive, right? You're already, but I want you to drill this. And again, it's not repetition. I'm using the term drill for alive. And I'm here if you need me, ask questions. And that's a lot of time they'll ask, personalized questions, and I can help them personally. But a lot of times them and their partners are working through these things with their drills. And that's been a good thing also. And I think it's all feeding the same thing. And I think what you said, I hadn't thought about that aspect from a coaching standpoint, but I think everyone needs to be their own coach.
Yeah. Yeah. Independent learning is the underrated but integral part of the constraints-led approach, is eventually becoming an independent learner, self-directed.
Yeah. I think that's a good, and in jiu-jitsu, and I heard Greg say this recently, and I've been exploring it also, just scaling, allowing them to scale. So in my all levels class, almost every drill ends with score or submission, right? No matter what situation we set up, the end result is you end up in a scoring position or you end up in a submission. But I don't want white belts to think that they have to do, so we scale it. You can end up with just a limb isolated. You can end up, with just, we could find all kinds of ways for them to have a success in the drill on their own. And I don't necessarily have to dictate that for them. And so I think, that these are things that the constraints-led approach, ecological dynamics, has really helped me explore as I take myself out of the equation a little bit.
Real quick, if you want to bring your CLA coaching and ecological dynamics knowledge to the next level, upgrade to the Premium Combat Learning newsletter. It's the best way to support the show, and you'll get access to exclusive articles and recordings on how to practically apply the science of skill acquisition to martial arts training. Right now, I'm taking Rob Gray's How We Learn to Move book and applying it to martial arts practice design chapter by chapter. Other premium articles include how to manipulate constraints to build deep skill, how the fundamentals emerge on their own, and representative learning design for martial arts training. All these and more are available to you when you upgrade to the Premium Combat Learning subscription. It's less than an OpenMat drop-in fee per month. Seriously, in 4 years of publicly promoting and teaching this stuff, this is by far my best work. Simply go to combatlearning.com and press the button at the top right corner, or you can find an upgrade button in recent emails. See you there. Yeah, absolutely. People used to call CLA hands-off coaching. It's not exactly that. But yeah, that's misleading. But you're fading out a little bit. You're kind of almost on the same level. It's coadaptation is what they call it in the literature, where you're not there to tell them exactly what to do, but you are there to help them
Right.
solve the
Right.
problem.
Yes. And the questions I get asked during class are different now.
Right.
They are more about solving the problems. They're less about, do I put my foot here or do I put my,
Yeah.
finger? Where's my right finger go? Like, I don't know where the fuck your right finger goes, but those are questions, but that's what most coaches are trying to have their students need. Need to know,
Yeah.
where does my hand go? Where does my
Yeah.
foot go? And so those questions have gone away, and now we're getting more questions about problem solving. Hey, coach, do you think I could? You think I could try this? And let's go, give it a shot. And a lot of times, we'll get questions about something, and the answer is, well, let's set that situation up. Not, I will tell you how I solve it, which is what we've always done in the past. It's what jiu-jitsu coaches always do. It's what the whole video market is. Here's how I've solved this problem since I was a blue belt.
Mm.
Well, I don't think that helps anybody. So the questions have changed, and my role in answering those questions has changed. And during the training, I walk around, and if I see someone struggling, I offer them some advice. Have you considered this? Have you tried this? And I think it's a better relationship with my students now.
For sure. I'm interested to know. So we touched on this a little bit, but how do you balance the safety with the aliveness? So most people don't seem to have much of a problem with body contact and leg contact. I mean, you do have people that are just rough, but the head contact seems to be hard for
Right.
people to be careful about and to moderate their force. So how have you balanced that
Okay.
with live training?
So the number one answer, and this is not a cop out because I think it's so important, is culture. I think the reason that you see, like, think of a boxing gym. Most boxers spar and they do solo work. And I'll consider pad work solo work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they spar, their coaches hold pads, and they hit the heavy bag. Solo
Yeah.
work, spar. Because the environment in the boxing gym is dog eat dog. The reason you see it on a football practice, where you see a live work, and then you see some ludicrous stuff going on with hula hoops and ball, I don't know, tennis balls and just crazy shit, is because every rep those guys go against each other is fighting for their position. Like, they can't afford to lose a rep. So they can't remove, you and I have talked about cooperative, competitive,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those are two different things. All live training is uncooperative,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't all have to be competitive.
Right.
And so we have a culture where we can be, even in striking, we can be uncooperative without being competitive.
Yeah.
And that is something we try and instill from day one.
Yes.
And I think now, again, you can't, when I set up my drills and things, again, I have that lawyer, like, I have enough experience to know this drill is going to set up a bunch of car crashes, right? Like, somebody's going to walk into something, somebody's going to get, and I have to be really careful about drills like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the culture gives us the ability to train at a fast pace, alive, uncooperative, without, there's always risk, but without the risk of someone really getting injured. Walking into, maybe they walk into a one, but they don't get hit with a 2-piece or a 3-piece, you know, and so the culture of everybody helping each other, because nobody's special. Even when I had world champions training in the gym, they weren't special. They nobody was there. Nobody was there to be their meats. Like I don't believe in that.
Yeah.
You fight Saturday night. If you're healthy, you're back in the gym Monday, and I don't care if it was a world title fight on Saturday night. And we have built that and nurtured that, and we've had to prune that over the years, and gotten rid of people who can't get it. But I think that's the most important thing, because I like offense defense drills. I think it's a good way to, because a lot of MMA is it looks like a tennis game. I throw a combo at you, like 1-3, and you defend, and then we move around a little bit, and you throw it back at me.
Yeah.
Or I throw at you, and then we move around. I throw at you again. I throw at you again. I keep going first and last, first and last, first and last. So I like offense defense drilling, and I think we can scale out of that. But you could still, offense defense drilling could still end up with one person just beating the shit out of someone else.
Right.
But the culture doesn't allow that. And it never has. When it was just, me, Rory, a bunch of guys without shirts on, Forrest Griffin and stuff like that, that was something I realized very early, because I knew that head trauma was real. And I knew that we shouldn't be wasting that in the gym, especially when no one's paying us to do it.
Yeah.
And I also knew that you needed people in those practices who, they didn't want to fight. They just enjoyed being there, and the camaraderie and the sparring. And some of those guys were really skilled. I mean, I bet a bunch of guys in your gym who, had they wanted to, they could have done something. But
Yeah.
they had wives and kids. They had wives and kids and jobs, and that's not what they were about. But I wanted those people to be a part of that team. And so I couldn't have those people getting killed either. I know there's a time, the last 4 or 5 weeks of getting something ready, where I start to pull back on who trains with who. Right. So proper partner pairing starts to become part of that, the answer to your question. Like, when no one's getting ready for anything, and it's Saturday morning, and we got the big gloves on and the shin pads, and we're just having rounds, everyone should be able to train with everybody. Like, my boxing coach had this saying, and it was, if I hurt you, it's my fault. If you hurt me, it's my fault. And that's something I try and instill. But I know the last 3-4 weeks, I don't want guys to have to slow down. So we just start to pull back who they train with. That's another sort of safety mechanism. And so those things, and then, practice design, drill design, and the coach being hyper aware, hyper cognizant of everything that can go wrong. I think those are all really important things.
Yeah, you have to watch. You can't just set and forget with the games, right? People want that.
Yeah.
They want you hey, these are the games we're going to do for this lesson. There's so many lessons in a block, and we're just going to run the rotating curriculum. And for a lot of reasons, it doesn't work like that. But in the class, you have to watch what everyone's doing, because some people don't self-regulate very well.
Right.
And some people need to have individual constraints modified to make the games more useful to both players. So yeah, it's going back to the hands-off thing. It's not hands-off. It's
No.
You're very involved, but just in a different way.
Yeah. Even especially in striking, I mean, you have to be on top of everybody. You have to know which people need to be watched more, which groups need to be watched more. So yeah, it's not hands off. It's less about you.
Right.
Because, we don't have to give them that information. The environment has to give them the information.
Mm-hmm.
It took them a little while to realize that there were certain questions where if I kept answering maybe, then they should stop asking that question. Like, coach, should I do this at this time? I'm like, maybe. Like, how would I know? It's one of the things that bothers me about listening to people cornering fighters.
Yeah.
Is like, you're not in there. You have no idea what they're saying. Like, you train that person to do something. If they're not doing it, you can't just keep telling them to do it. There's a reason they're not doing it, and you can't see it. So you have to have another answer.
You can't feel
Or you
what
can
they're
just keep,
feeling.
yeah. You can't feel what they're feeling. You can't see what they're seeing. You don't know what that pressure feels like, what the fear feels like. You don't know. So when they come back to the corner and you're like, you need to jab more, like, they know that, but they can't do it. So figure out something else. But they can't. So they just yell louder.
Yeah. Yeah. I made a tweet the other day. I was like, it must be, it's funner when you work with really great like elite athletes. Coaching in the IP is enjoyable usually in that situation. But when you're working with people who aren't like just naturally super gifted, it must be just miserable. Like, because the only thing you can do is make them do more repetitions and then scream at them louder. Those are the only two levers you have to pull.
Yeah. And they're not great. They're not great levers.
No.
They're not great levers. Yeah, because I have to assume that the coach got that fighter ready and they had a plan. And the plan was go out and throw your double jab. Well, if they're not throwing a double jab, it's not because they forgot the plan. It's because something in the environment is stopping them. And you just telling them, hey, double jab more, that's just useless. It's not helping anybody. And actually, if anything, it just creates more stress. And they can't react to that. So, I think you see sort of IP type coaches probably have a harder time cornering when it starts to go wrong.
Yeah.
Because you can't just press the button. You can't run the joystick. It's broken.
Yeah. Yeah. And they think, they get upset at their athletes because they're like, you didn't listen to me. You didn't listen to me. Well, you might have, you're watching from a third person perspective, which there's always value to a third person perspective, but you have a real time fight. Some of the stuff you told him to do might've been impossible.
Yes. Or late. It's late.
Yeah.
You saw it and then it went away.
Yeah.
I've asked my amateurs all the time, like after the fights when we do like a debrief, and I'm like, did you hear us? They're like, yeah, I heard you clearly. And they're just like, I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, okay, that makes total sense. Probably because there was another athlete on top of you stopping you. So, yeah, it's that's something. But I was talking to Rory. It was probably like 8 months ago, and it was this example came up, and we were talking about a fighter keeping his chin up in the air, and I was like, okay, so you watch him sparring, and you say, hey, so and so, keep your chin down, and why? Like, okay, fine. Now, when they don't do that, telling them to do it again is not coaching anymore. What do you do? Like, how do you fix that? And that simple problem encapsulates the difficulties with real coaching.
Yep.
Because that should be, maybe it's a tennis ball or biting a shirt. I don't know what the answer is, but it's not saying
chin tag.
Chin tag. It's just, we know it's not right. They'll or it's not having them figure out that they got punched in the face a lot or in the chin, but it can't be just telling them over and over, put your chin down, put your chin down. I figured out recently that I had always been a stickler for keeping your hands up. And I was always a stickler for fighting in one stance. And I, I'm not a stickler for those things anymore the last couple of years. But I realized there's a difference between putting your arms down, putting your hands down, and dropping your hands.
Hmm.
Right? If you want to put your hands down and do whatever the hell you want to, that's explore that. Go ahead, be creative, explore that. You
Yeah.
can get knocked out with your hands up or your hands down.
Right.
But if you're unconsciously dropping your hands, then that's something we have to fix. We have to work on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's
You
the
know,
big thing that I've had arguments with striking coaches far more experienced than me. This is really bad in like the karate taekwondo sphere too, right? The people that they do karate but they hate the sport stuff because you don't keep your hands up or whatever. They think that keeping your hands up is a cheat code. I'm like, have you ever sparred with small gloves? You can slip right through. And I'm sorry, but keeping your hands up is literally zero barrier to a kick.
right,
They're going to kick your fist into your head, and there's nothing you
right,
can do to stop it unless you actively block it or move. Like, that's the idea that you're protecting yourself with a shell is ridiculous. It's just easy to move. You're at the wrong end of the lever when you press up here.
right.
It's you're just gonna put a knuckle into your brain. It's not like I don't know, these people that have trained for years have all these myths that they can't dislodge. Even
Right.
watching
Well,
MMA, you see them. They're not like this all the time. They're
no,
their guards moving around. They have long guards.
yeah.
Like, yeah.
And even the most talented strikers in the world, after if they throw like let's say they throw a 3-punch combo, watch it in
Mhm.
slow motion. After the second punch, their guard is all over the place.
Right.
You never see like a 3-punch combo come off the head back to the head. It's like
Yes. Yeah.
the jab's off the head, and the cross is off the shoulder, and the left hook is off the hip. And
Hmm.
that's the best guys in the world because shit falls apart under pressure.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, but I believe that hands up was a cheat code. So now I teach my beginners, hands up, but they have to explore all kinds of different things. But dropping the hands is a different thing.
Yeah.
Changing stances is explore it, do it, shift, shake, but you can't fall forward when you're throwing across. Right? One is a choice to explore, and one is it can be a fatal error.
Hmm.
But how do you coach those things? That's the difficult thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways. I mean, they do in order to understand the calibration or the attunement they need to make. They need to be aware of the cost of the mistake. So if you can find a way to amplify the error, and this Rob Grace talked about this, like amplifying errors
Yes.
is a valid constraints-led approach. So how can you do that safely to 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 actually cause somebody who's making a pretty bad tactical move to feel it and find a different way to adapt to that problem. The chin tag, I think, is a great way to not with a fist so much, but with the fingers maybe. So because what are they going to do as soon as the only okay you can tag any part of the chin right here, right, with any one of the hands. What is the first thing they're going to start doing? So
I
they're gonna
think
put
I
their
think we
they're
may
gonna
end up.
bury.
Do you play a lot of that?
Um, no, I
I
thought it
don't
up
love
in my head.
fingers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the risk of
Yeah,
fingers in the eyes and stuff.
that that is that
That'd
is
be
a
a
risk.
tough one for me. I have a
Mhm.
coach who really likes slap boxing.
Really?
Like he's a big Diaz fan, and he thinks it's it's a low risk. Because I mean it hurts your ego to get slapped, but it doesn't cause CTE.
I don't know
I don't
about
think people
that.
like it. Good point, right? You
That's a
can slap
large
the shit out of
striking.
someone.
That's a large striking surface.
You can slap the shit out of someone. Yeah,
Getting a
I
very
don't do it.
nice purchase on your head.
Bam. Yeah, I don't do it.
Yeah.
Right. It's I I in my coaching course I talk about, that there's one of the big differences jujitsu and striking is when you make a mistake in jujitsu, you just tap.
Hmm.
When
Yeah.
you make a mistake in striking, someone hits you in the face.
Right.
And it doesn't take too many of those, especially for newer people, to start, being gun shy, turning away, being
Hmm.
afraid.
Hmm.
And if that happens too early, I think it's very hard to come back from. Yeah, I wonder how many over the years, when we were much more of a hardcore gym. I wonder how many good training partners we lost early because we put them right in the deep end. Like we didn't give them time to acclimate.
Right.
I think we're doing a much better job of that now. I have a lot more people who are just sparring for fun now, and I
Yeah, I
think
mean it's a sport. You should be able to. There's casual chess players and there's pro chess players. There should be a casual chess player aspect of playing the sport of jujitsu that isn't just doing drills and reps.
sure,
Yeah, like there should be a way to even compete in a way that's less injurious and intense than the who's number one or IBJJF worlds or something.
right. Yeah, I agree. And I think that people should have an outlet to do some striking sparring also without,
Yep.
forgetting their math skills or whatnot.
Yeah, that's what I like about like some of the, especially for kids, like the sport karate and the sport taekwondo. Yeah, it doesn't look like kickboxing. It's not going to be good in MMA, but it keeps you active. It's fun. It's interesting, and it's just a sport. It's like playing. It's like pickleball to tennis
Right.
or table
Right.
tennis to tennis. They can be
Well,
competitive. They can be useful, and their skill levels, but it's not as demanding.
well, pickleball is the most injurious sport in America right now. Do you know
Oh,
that?
is it really?
So it is the fastest growing sport and it is the highest injury rate of any sport in America because the the thing you take out of tennis, which is having to run longer distances, you now make up for with asking people to make these short area changes of direction.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So
They're
now
not
you're
conditioned
having
for it. Yeah.
yeah, and so now people are going from tennis to pickleball, and it's a different demand.
Hmm.
And so you're getting, you were talking about the karate and stuff, and immediately like Stephen Thompson popped in my head.
Hmm.
I know him for a long time. We're in the same area. I know him from this world and stuff. There's no way he would still be in this sport, being a high level striker, had he blown his chin out over the years. I mean, they
Yeah.
do a lot of tag, a lot of touch, and I
Hmm.
think I see no reason that even an MMA gym can't do more of that.
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of really good value in that.
Yeah. It's useful. It's interesting because people are like, well, point karate. If you do the point break thing, it's not like continuous, and that's true. There's other things going on with your positioning in a kickboxing match, but the exchange cadence is somewhat similar. So even though it's not totally representative, there is some crossover skill there
Right?
that you could use as a donor sport that you eventually have to contextualize with the demands of kickboxing. Um, but you can play a lot of that and still get good at certain aspects of the exchange.
Sure. And I think the distancing, you know, we fight MMA from outside to in, whereas boxers and kickboxers, they start the exchanges and they are always a lot closer to
Hmm.
each other because of the gloves, because of things like that. And it's interesting to see the small glove Thai boxing now,
Yeah.
and to see that that's almost a completely different sport.
Yeah.
Because if you fight Thai boxing with 4-ounce gloves, it's not good for you. So now you're seeing guys that probably wouldn't be really good Thai boxers under those conditions do pretty well with the 4-ounce gloves.
Yeah.
And it's just it's environmental constraints.
Mm-hmm.
Change something, it changes. And I
Yeah.
love it. I love those things. I love to watch
Yeah.
those things go on.
Yeah. We at striking sports, we need to not like hate each other because it doesn't look like boxing or doesn't look like kickboxing. Like people say, like, well, MMA striking sucks and their reasoning is because it doesn't look like boxing. And I was like, that's stupid. MMA
Yeah.
striking does not suck. If you fight a
No.
good MMA striker, he will pick you apart in 5 seconds. Like you're done. There is nothing you can do, and he'll
It
probably
just
beat a boxer. If you fight in like a kickboxing rule set, an MMA striker is going to beat a boxer in most cases.
I don't disagree with that. It's once it's my boxing coach used to always rag on a long time ago. He ragged on Chuck Liddell. He's like, Chuck Liddell's boxing is terrible. And I'm like, well, he's not boxing. Like,
Yeah.
Chuck Liddell is perfectly attuned to do what he does because his opponents are not standing toe to toe with him. His
Right.
opponents can take him down, they can kick him, they can grab him. The MMA striking looks the way it has to look given all the things that are available to happen.
Right.
We have to include takedowns. We have to include shots in almost all of our striking rounds, which is another, like, that's a difficult safety thing because falling is always a big risk. But
Yeah.
if you're not attuned to that double leg, if you're not attuned to that single leg, your striking in MMA is useless
Mm-hmm.
because people will just run you over.
Yeah. And that changes even if you're not good at taking somebody down, that there's almost like a ghost or a phantom constraint there whenever you fight somebody that, oh, this could be an option. And so that organizes your game differently than it's like in I hate chess analogies because people always use them wrong.
But
But
you like chess analogies. You've used them a couple
I
times.
have, but I use them in a particular. I can use chess analogies. You can't use chess analogies. That's
Fair
how it
enough.
is.
I don't play chess, so it's okay.
No, I don't mean use particularly. My audience, the people that I tell to stop using chess as an analogy. Motor control and stuff like that. Chess has nothing to do with that. Stop talking about chess in terms of jiu-jitsu is not human chess in terms of moves and all that kind of stuff. However, in terms of strategy,
Okay.
you can clinch, you can pinch, you can. They call them forcing moves. I'm not very good at chess, by the way. I'm interested in it. Fascinates me.
Okay.
You forcing moves are moves that put pressure on pieces so so it occludes different moves and strategies. And
Okay.
that's an example of how constraints work. And on a micro level, like in a sport or in a fight, if you know somebody can just double leg you at will within a range, you're going to fight at a larger range, or you're going to find some clever way to get in closer. So I guess that was a really roundabout way of getting to that point. But
No, it's perfect. I mean, you see it in
yeah.
MMA all the time. As soon as a person knows that the shot is possible, it changes things. I
Mm-hmm.
use with my guys, I use GSP and Johnny Hendricks.
Mm.
When Johnny Hendricks came out, the first time he sat down to throw his big overhand, GSP took him down. Like Hendricks had no chance. He ended up on his back. GSP grounded, pounded him a little bit. They came back up. Hendricks never sat down to throw that punch again.
Yep.
That was his biggest weapon. That is a powerful thing. The calf kick is giving people that ability. If you can't outbox somebody, well, you throw that calf kick. Now all of a sudden they have to be real careful about sitting down on their punch combos or being heavy on that jab. If you can't deal with someone's jab, parry it and kick them in the calf, all of a sudden they have to think about something different.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this idea that MMA striking is this or that is just, it's silly.
Yeah, it's not boxing. I remember Holly Holm fought a girl that was a really good boxer. Like, her boxing was way better. Very tight, explosive, and she could get in, and Holly Holm couldn't really hang. I mean, she's okay at boxing. She's a kickboxer, right? So she's
Yes.
pretty good. She's a pretty good boxer, but this girl was better. And Holly Holm tore her apart with kicks and range. And this boxer girl wanted to stay in the pocket, and Holly Holm wasn't letting her be there. So the other girl didn't have kicks, and her leg defense wasn't very good. So she was, she picked her apart with that. Just being able to move and catch her with kicks and tear her leg apart, and then make her not want to be close, right? She wants to be close, and then you tear apart her leg. And
Right.
now she's kind of apprehensive
Yeah.
with that.
No, it makes sense. It's the cage is a good example of
Yeah.
that changes the wrestling
Yep.
in MMA. Most people, if you didn't wrestle since you were a child, you can't out wrestle a wrestler in the middle of the cage. But most wrestlers spend no time on the cage growing up.
Mm-hmm.
You spend your time on the cage. Now you can use the cage. So now a non-wrestler has the ability to possibly change the dynamics by using the cage,
Yeah.
using it defensively, using it offensively, using it to get up. It's really, it's why I love MMA, because it does afford so many different opportunities and tactics, so many ways to win, so many ways to lose. I also think it's probably it's always going to be a difficult marketing thing, because it's going to be rare for a person to just keep winning, winning, winning,
Mm-hmm.
because there are so many ways to lose.
Yeah.
There are so many ways for someone to figure out your strengths and use them against you.
Yeah. And you even have some of the best guys kind of, there's some quick turnover
Oh
sometimes.
yeah.
And you don't know, one guy who's the champion. Yeah, he's the champion right now, but so and so was injured. So
Right.
like
Right.
and then they go up against each other. And then you have a guy who's not even ranked as high as these other people, that his game is just well adapted to the top guys. You just don't know. Like, you never know.
Right. Right. And a lot of the MMA champions are, they're in their early 30s. And for an athlete, that's about, that's about the time we start watching for them to be done.
Yeah.
But boxers have a little bit, boxers can go a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we see in MMA, once those guys hit those early 30s, it's just a matter of time. Brian Bowles once said to me, is like, you never know when you saw a guy win his last fight.
Yeah.
That's how quickly it changes.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of MMA, and the difficulty for them to market the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you had some quick and dirty tips for a guy who wants to start teaching striking in the CLA ecological way, what are your best tips?
Okay. So one is, you have to build a culture around mutual care, mutual consideration. Um, I think that your focus on I'll use the word instruction, but your focus on your instruction, your drilling, should
Mhm.
be distance management and defense first. It should not be built around landing strikes. It should be around defense and positioning, um, and managing the distance and the space. I think that builds the right mentality. Um, and so when those two things are coupled together, I think that you start to go down the right path. Um, don't focus on combo of the day. Striking is much, 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 much simpler. Not easy, but it is simpler than people want to make it out to be.
Yeah.
So if you avoid almost everything you see on Instagram and YouTube, you realize, and you just focus, understand the sport. Most, the average combo length is like 2.
Yeah.
right? Which means it's 1 to 3. And so you don't have to overcomplicate anything. I think that's my beginning advice. Obviously you and I talked about, constrain, front hands, jabs. I like offense defense work. Um, things like that. I like to manipulate the distance a lot. So I'll put one person with their foot against the cage, and I'll let the other one move. So the person with their foot
Mhm.
against the cage, that's the only constraint they have. But this way, the person who can freely move can dictate a little of the contact. They can dictate, so we don't end up with car crashes. So I do drills like that. I do like the shoulder, belly, leg touch. I think they're really good warm ups. I don't use them in lieu of sparring,
Mhm.
but I think they're good warm ups. Um, Good gloves. I think good gloves are really important. I've been in too many gyms where I've seen people sparring, and I've looked and I'm like, they let you spar with these gloves? Like, good equipment. Equipment's a constraint, right?
Yeah.
So make sure people have the right gloves that have the right padding and are soft. MMA gloves, they have some great MMA gloves now that almost have the same type of padding as boxing gloves.
Mm.
Um, I think it's really important that if you're doing MMA, you do a lot of your work in those gloves. You know, the you can see the difference in the way people handle the distancing and the striking with the big gloves versus small gloves. Um, I think that's it.
Yeah. And wear eye protection so you can do chin tag.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that. Well, look, the small gloves, you end up with those eye pokes too.
Mhm.
And it's just a difficult part of the sport. I had tested out. Someone had sent us some gloves to test out. Um, they were almost a boxing glove, but the thumb was unpadded and it was sort of free. And I must
Yeah.
have poked like 3 people in the eye with my thumb.
Yeah. Those are the ones that look like the international like the World Karate Federation gloves. They're very particular, right? They have a lot of padding on
Right?
the fist, but they're open so you can grab because you can actually
Yeah,
sweep in that version of the sport. But yeah, I've seen those. Somebody at the gym was wearing those. They're like Fight Corner or Combat Corner or something. The
yeah,
brand.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Combat Corner makes the best MMA gloves right now. The best MMA sparring gloves because they
Okay.
have all the padding is on the knuckles, and
Oh,
so you can throw almost the same way you do with the big gloves, but they're still a small glove. They're
yeah.
really nice. And I've noticed when I watch footage of different gyms sparring, I'm seeing a lot more of those gloves.
Cool. Yeah.
They're not cheap, but I think they're starting to make some like non-leather versions and some cheaper versions of the same glove. But that's just another piece of advice. Make sure
Mhm.
everyone's in the right gear. Make sure, like, do you ever see people? They wear those. They wear like the Taekwondo shin pads.
Yeah.
The what? Like, you know what I'm talking about?
The cloth ones with
The cloth
the
ones.
foam. Yeah.
Yeah. And when someone walks in to their first day with those on, I'm like, where did you get those? They're like Amazon. I'm like,
By the
yeah,
way,
there's a reason.
nobody in sport taekwondo wears those anymore. Like they sell them
Okay.
still, but if you watch like, you can't wear those in competition because they move too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, they're terrible.
Yeah.
They're terrible. I really like the Rev Gear makes a shin that I really like.
Mm.
But I guess my only point just being like it, the equipment is a constraint. It changes the way you approach the sparring,
Yeah.
how safe it is, how you feel about it. And so I just make sure everyone has the right gear.
Great. Man, this has been awesome. So if people want to reach out to you and pick your brain, where can they find you?
That is a great question. SBGAthens.com is my website. This shouldn't screw us up. I'm going to tell you what my Instagram is. I've just gotten on Instagram.
Sure.
just started posting stuff. It is Adam Singer SBG.
Okay.
And I am very accessible. I always return messages and stuff. So if anyone wants to hit me up there, that's where I bother people also. I'm on the Discord. I'm not on the Discord too much, but Ecological Dynamics Discord, I do check that a couple times a week. I'm hoping the Strike Force Discord takes off. I'm interested I'm interested to have some conversations there as well. So, and this was great. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed getting to talk to you, pick your brain a little bit. I look forward to it in the future.
Yeah, I had fun, man. I appreciate you being generous with your time as well.
Of course, you too.
Thanks for listening. Before you go, can you do me a big favor? Positive reviews help the show get more listens. If you got value from this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And don't forget to check out combatlearning.com for more resources on skill acquisition and coaching. See you on the next episode. This episode was produced by Micah Peacock, including the intro and outro music.